While our daughter Mia was being scorched in the kitchen, my husband, Nick Anderson, was miles away helping his first love, Jen, with a stubborn pickle jar. In the panic of trying to pay for Mia's emergency care, I discovered that Nick had transferred all my savings into his own accounts. He used our wealth to bolster his facade of a wealthy playboy in front of Jen. Frantically, I dialed Nick's number, pleading for some cash to save our daughter. From the other end, Nick's response was ice cold. Wow, you've really turned vicious, making jokes about our daughter's life? Just disappear. Then, the grim news of Mia's death was eventually received by Nick. As I organized her funeral, I texted him, "It's time we talk about divorce." Our 8-year-old Mia was buzzing with excitement to show off a new recipe she learned to her dad. A kitchen mishap occurred while I stepped out briefly to grab some soy sauce. Mia's hair was singed off, and her skin turned a ghostly white from the burns. Meanwhile, Nick, who had been lounging on the sofa, had vanished. Despite her severe pain, Mia tried to console me. "Mom, I'm alright really. Don't cry." "Mommy, does Daddy not love me anymore? I just wanted him to taste my cooking, and he tossed it out." He said he had to help Aunt Jen open a jar, and then he left. Jen Westwood, Nick's ever-persistent old flame. Without a moment to lose, I, along with our neighbors, rushed Mia to the hospital. Witnessing my daughter, scarred and in pain, being hurried into surgery broke me. A compassionate nurse steadied me as I nearly fell, reassuring me, "We're doing all we can. You'll need to handle the payment first." It was a posh private clinic, and the fees were steep. An alert on my phone showed insufficient funds. In desperation, I checked all my accounts. All my substantial savings had been stealthily moved to Nick's accounts. Shaking, I consolidated the last of my funds onto one card to settle the hefty hospital bill. With a mix of anger and desperation, I hammered Nick's phone with calls. After countless attempts, he answered lazily. "What's the commotion now?" Struggling to speak through tears and shaking with rage, I managed. "The kitchen exploded. Where were you?" He dismissed the severity. "I heard about the explosion, but Jen couldn't open that jar by herself." Realizing he knew and chose not to come broke me further. "You knew and did nothing. Mia's in the ER now, severely injured. How can you be so heartless, Nick? Cut the drama. Mia is no toddler. Couldn't she have moved out of the way?" He cut me off, his tone frigid. Remembering Mia's yearning for her father's affection, I softened. "Please, come see Mia at the hospital. I'm begging you." Over the phone, Jen's coaxing voice grew louder. Impatient, Nick retorted, "Your tactics sicken me. Using our daughter's crisis to manipulate me? Why don't you just drop dead?" And with that, he hung up. I felt a cold dread settle in my heart. The ER doors swung open. Mia lay there, her face obscured by a white sheet. I held her cold, still hand, pretending she could still hear me. Mia adored all things pink. I poured my heart into planning a pink-themed funeral. While still reeling from the shock, I sent one last message to Nick, still entwined with Jen. "Let's end this. Divorce." Meeting Nick was straight out of a daytime drama. He was in a dark place, literally trying to end it all by drowning. Luckily, I was there to pull him out of the water. From there, we hit it off, and I found myself falling for him. Before I knew it, Nick was down on one knee, proposing. I hesitated, unsure of his true intentions. My family's wealth far exceeded his. I feared he was after my money and the influence of my family. Reluctantly, I said no. But then Nick knelt before me, tears streaming down his face. "Chloe, I don't need your money. I just want to be by your side, to care for you forever. I truly love you." His words melted my heart, and I accepted his proposal. Soon after, we welcomed Mia into the world. Nick was ecstatic to be a father and a husband. He took to it with a zeal I hadn't seen before. He knew how tough I found balancing work and home, so he stepped up as a stay-at-home dad. We were even named the neighborhood's Family of the Year. Everyone was envious. I believed Nick loved me and our little family. But everything changed when Jen Westwood walked back into our lives. Nick began to come home late, or not at all. He seemed indifferent to Mia, often outright ignoring her. Our home became a battlefield of endless arguments. Still, he kept going back to Jen. I considered divorce, but Mia didn't want to be away from her dad. I felt stuck, holding off on any decisions. Little did I know, Nick's choice would end up costing Mia her life. Despite knowing she was in danger, he chose to help Jen with something as trivial as a jar lid. It was clear where his priorities lay. The guilt is mine to bear. My decisions led to the loss of my precious daughter. Perhaps Nick was eager to be free because, without needing a prompt, he came back the next day. I was sorting through my and Mia's belongings when he walked in with a turtle in his arms. That turtle belonged to Jen. He cooed at it. "Just hang in there, buddy. You'll get some meat soon." His patience was a stark contrast to his treatment of Mia. I felt a pang in my heart as he spoke. Nick went to the fridge to get some meat, then remembered the kitchen was in ruins. "Guess we're out of luck, pal. You'll have to rough it with bigger chunks today," he said, carefully tearing the meat into pieces and tenderly feeding the turtle. I remembered how Nick would rush Mia through meals, never patient, always forcing her to eat, regardless of whether the food was too hot. When Mia resisted, he would scold her harshly. Now, here he was, treating a turtle with more compassion than he ever showed his daughter. By now, Mia would have been tugging at his sleeve, begging him to play with her. But Nick would always dismiss her, cold and detached. Since entering the house, he hadn't even asked where Mia was. Nick paused in the destroyed kitchen, looking lost as he searched for something. Then he called out, "Where's that old fish tank? I need it for the turtle. Find it for me, quickly." I couldn't contain my anger and grief any longer. Before he knew what was happening, I slapped him across the face. His head turned with the force of my blow, and when he looked back, his face was livid. "Chloe, are you out of your mind? First, you used the divorce to get me here, and now you're attacking me like a madwoman. I must have been cursed to end up with you, and that brat." The sudden noise frightened the turtle, which withdrew into its shell. Nick's tone softened as he comforted the turtle. "If this scare hurts my little buddy, you're going to pay." I took a deep breath, suppressing the sharp pain in my heart. "Nick, Mia is dead.